are 5 of the strangest medical disorders. Number 1. Uner syndrome. Born in Un, Turkey in May of 1937, Uner was a Turkish evolutionary biologist. Uner has spent some time observing the Kurdish Grizan Ulus family of 19. Of these 19, 5 walked on all fours in a bear crawl-like manner instead of upright. According to Uner syndrome is when an individual walks on all fours and are afflicted with primitive speech and severe mental retardation due to 2 rare phenomena coming together. First, instead of initially crawling as infants on their knees, they started off learning to move around with the bear crawl on their feet. Second, due to congenital brain impairment, they found balancing on 2 legs very difficult. Because of this, their motor development was channeled into turning their bear crawl into a substitute for bipedalism or walking upright on 2 legs. Uner claimed this is an example of backward evolution, otherwise known as de-evolution, in which species can revert into more primitive forms over time. BBC documented the Grizan Ulus family in a 2006 documentary called The Family That Walks on All Fours, documenting this bizarre primitive family and their primitive nature. Signs and symptoms include damage to the vestibular system, the system responsible for balance and motion in mammals and may cause dramatic retardation to the mammal if damaged. Interfamiliar marriages and individuals that may have been isolated from society can also develop this. There's no known cause, and these are all speculations from tests performed on sufferers of the illness. Number 2. Alien hand syndrome. Alien hand syndrome is a rare neurological disorder that causes hand movement without the person being aware of what is happening and not having any control over the action. This usually happens when the 2 hemispheres of a person's brain is surgically separated to treat something like extreme epilepsy. Signs and symptoms of this include feeling normal sensations in the hand and leg while losing a loss of sense of agency associated with the movement of the hand itself, but still remaining a sense of ownership of your hand. This can be seen in toddlers if they exhibit strange behaviors such as harming others, pinching and harming others when they would otherwise not act out negatively. It is theorized that alien hand syndrome results when disconnection occurs between different parts of the brain that are engaged in different aspects of control of bodily movement. As a result, different regions of the brain are able to command bodily movements but cannot generate a conscious feeling of self-control over these movements. Number 3. Vampire syndrome. Porphyria is a rare disease otherwise known as the vampire syndrome. Porphyria is a term derived from Greek meaning purple pigment in reference to the color of porphins, or the pigments in red blood cells. The human body requires porphins to produce hemes that can carry oxygen to the blood. But in the afflicted person's case, there is a deficiency of enzymes that transform porphins into the others, leading to abnormal levels manifesting into skin problems or neurological symptoms, and in some cases both. This means that exposure to things like sunlight can cause severe abdominal pain, vomiting, and mental disturbances. This is due to the fact that porphins react with light. Skin disease may occur in areas where excess porphins accumulate in the skin, thus making sufferers of this disease to react like Hollywood's depictions of vampires and burn in the sunlight. The disease usually avoid the sunlight at all costs. Signs and symptoms include seizures, comas, and other psychiatric symptoms like anxiety, confusion, hallucinations, and in some cases, psychosis. Number 4. Progeria. Progeria is an extremely rare genetic disorder where the victims age very quickly and prematurely. Those infected have abnormal skin changes, abnormal growth, and hair loss, giving a distinct and disturbing look. The word progeria comes from the Greek word pro, meaning before or premature. With this condition, most inflicted people do not live long enough to reproduce and die by the age of 13 due to such things as heart attacks or strokes. Mental development is surprisingly not affected by this disease, and patients usually may have higher than usual intelligence. This is a mutation in which LMNA, the gene code for a structural protein, has cytosine, a component of DNA and RNA, replaced with thymine, a compound of nucleic acid in DNA. Signs and symptoms include skin conditions, limited growth, hair loss, and child developing small and fragile elderly-like bodies within the first few months of life, becoming more apparent around 18 to 24 months of a child's birth. There is no proven treatment or cure for progeria, and this disease affects approximately 1 in 4 million births annually. Number 5. Autophagia. Autophagia is the disorder in which one begins to eat themselves. This is not to be confused with cannibalism, as you only desire your own flesh and not another's. The majority of those inflicted by this disorder will often feel a sense of tension or sexual arousal before committing the act of eating their own flesh. They experience pleasure, gratification, or relief at the time of committing this act. After the self-mutilation has been committed, the individual may or may not feel guilty or regret their actions. Although this is sometimes seen in those suffering from mental disorders like schizophrenia or psychosis, Autophagia is not classified as a mental disorder, nor is it a symptom of a mental disorder. When tested and observed in lab rats, it was found that rats with spinal or peripheral damage display these behaviors, sometimes biting their toes or chewing off their whole foot. Signs of autophagia include having intense sexual fantasies about eating your own flesh or spending an abnormal amount of time thinking about eating your own flesh. Treatment for this include hypnosis and psychoanalysis. What are some of the strangest medical disorders you've heard of? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and like.